What up, brofo? I'm Leon, the Paperback Maniac, coming at you with another vintage horror book review. Today, we are taking a look at the infamous Grimm Memorials by R. Patrick Gates. Now, take a look at that tagline. The children were screaming. I'm going to warn you right now, if you are averse in any way to children in peril in literature, just click away right now. Just go ahead and do that. Now that I've got that disclaimer out of the way, this book was published by Onyx in 1990. I will begin by reading the synopsis from the back cover. Once upon a time, there was a perfect little New England town called Northwood. The people there were the nicest you'd ever hope to meet, like Steve and Diane Naylor and their terrific kids. And in a darling house on the edge of town, over the river and through the woods, an old lady lived. She was a witch, and she worked her wicked magic, first on all the men in town, and then on the women. Soon she would be ready to take on the children, in the most haunting, frightening, and grimmest fairy tale since the very first time innocence was forced to struggle with evil and terror. All right. So, this novel introduces us to the Naylor family, who are moving from Boston to the sleepy town of Northwood, Massachusetts. So we've got hubby Steve, a teacher and aspiring writer, who is hoping to win a poetry competition, the reward of which is, I shit you not, $100,000 for a poetry competition. It's just hilarious. Also his wife, Diane, who's pregnant, and the two kids from Diane's late husband. We've got 6-year-old Jackie and 10-year-old Jennifer. Now, in the beginning, on the drive from Boston to Northwood, Jennifer is reading her little brother Grimm fairy tales and is taking great delight in scaring the living shit out of her younger brother by claiming that these stories are all real. And she reminds Jackie that the house they're moving to is surrounded by thick woods and that there are all kinds of creatures surrounding that area, like ogres and trolls and witches, because this was an enchanted forest where the witch from Hansel and Gretel used to live. Now, Jackie gets terrified, of course. Jennifer is chastened by her parents, and if only they knew just how accurate Jennifer is, because as it turns out, there is a real witch who lives in those woods where they're moving, an ancient, ailing old lady by the name of Eleanor Grimm, who lives off the flesh of children and is desperately in need of collecting 13 innocent kids by Halloween so that she can use them as part of her ritualistic sacrifices on Samhain and the Harvest of Dead Souls. And if she can complete these sacrifices on the Harvest of Dead Souls, she will gain immortality. So yes, that is what the Naylor family has to contend with. So they arrive in this, beautiful house out in the rural woods. The little kid, Jackie, is creeped out by those woods, of course, because, of the stories his sister had told him. It doesn't help when the neighbors show up, like on the first night there, and tell the family that the child of the previous family who lived in this house had disappeared. And that, in fact, there have been a whole slew of child disappearances dating back to, like, the turn of the century. And that, even, like, a body of a kid had been turned up in the local river, like, a year ago. That was a body that was, quote-unquote, carved up like a Thanksgiving turkey. And then, of course, after dinner, as the kids are watching TV, appropriately, they're watching Bewitched, and the daughter of the neighbors turns to Jackie and Jennifer and says, hey, I know where a real witch lives, in the woods behind your house. And of course, this freaks out little Jackie even more. As he should be. He should be scared because this Eleanor Grimm, who lives in the area, is up to no good. Now, Eleanor lives in a rambling Gothic Victorian mansion called Grimm Memorials, which used to be the town mortuary. She is, your typical archetypal witch. She's got, straggly white hair, and she's ugly, although she can appear to be different things because she possesses a form of telepathy that makes her look different ways for different people. So she can actually invade people's thoughts and minds and sort of project images into their minds. And she uses this ability to lure children to her house, especially the kids that she needs to collect now for Samhain on Halloween. So, right from the bat, she starts to do this, and she loves to use images of sort of childhood, sort of happiness and safety to lure the kids. One scene early on in the novel, she lures a 4-year-old, because all of the kids that she wants, none of them are over pubescent age. She lures a 4-year-old by making him see all of the delightful nursery rhyme characters that his mother read to him before bed. So he sees Mother Goose and Little Muffet and Little Bo Peep and all those things, right? And then he sees his favorite character, Humpty Dumpty, sitting on a wall outside his bedroom window. And Humpty Dumpty sees him and smiles and waves, but then he loses his balance and topples over and shatters. And so this little 4-year-old boy thinks, oh no, I need to go save Humpty Dumpty. So he gets out of his, climbs out of his bedroom window and goes to the shattered Eggman. And as he's approaching Humpty Dumpty, he realizes that the yolk of the little man has turned into this putrescent, sort of quivering mass of, slime and blood. And then he looks around and sees that all of those charming nursery rhyme characters are being brutally slaughtered all around him. And then he sees Mother Goose waddling toward him and starts to run to her for protection against this, craziness. But as he approaches, Mother Goose's feathers start to molt, leaving in place these hideous, festering sores. Her eyes start running with blood. Her beak starts to disintegrate. And she transforms then into the cackling witch, Eleanor Grimm, who then takes the little boy and whisks him away. And that is just one example of the many, many ways that she utilizes, fairy tales to abduct these poor little children. And so I will say this book has some of the most indelible nightmare imagery and things that I just will never forget. The certain scenes of this book I will never forget, such as, an image of Snow White being gangbanged by her dirty mutant dwarves. Or things like just black humor too. Funny scenes, darkly humorous. Like one little girl is looking for her cat, her lost cat, and Eleanor Grimm appears to her as a matronly grandmother and says, "Oh yes, I saw your cat. I invited him in for a bowl of milk. Would you like to come in and have some hot cocoa with me?" And she invites this little girl in for hot cocoa and hands the little girl a steaming mug. And when the girl goes to drink it, she tastes and sees in the mug these orange clumps of fur. And then when she looks at the grandmother again, she sees the lady holding the skinned remains of her cat. And then the lady transforms into the witch and starts cackling maniacally. And she says, "Aha, you're mine now." Just absolutely just amazing scenes. I thought I had my glass here. So really just memorable imagery. And and there is a lot of gore, and I do love my gore, but it also has genuine frights too. This book is flat out scary at times. There's a scene where little Jackie is having a nightmare, and then he wakes up and there's a lightning storm outside, and he looks out his window, and in these lightning flashes, there just appears some really creepy and unsettling imagery. But the book is effective. I think a large part of that is, the fact that almost all of the victims are very, very young children. that is effective because, for horror really to be its most effective, you need to care about the characters, and if they can be vulnerable characters, it makes it even more effective. And who's more vulnerable than like a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old, right? I mean, you really care for these characters. And the character of Jackie, the little boy who for whatever reason the witch decides she's going to save for the end, for the last ceremony, I really liked that kid and really worried about him. There's actually some sad parts of this book where the kid feels like he's got no one in the world to turn to because the witch has sort of like cast a spell really over both of his parents, even his little sister. And so he's kind of all alone with no one to protect him. Friggin' 6-year-old kid, you really really are rooting for him and hope that he makes it out of there. But, it is effective in that way because, Mr. Gates establishes very early on that nothing is sacred in this book. He is not adhering to any sort of horror book conventions. Anyone can go in the most graphic nature at any time. So that really makes it exciting because it really is unpredictable. You don't know like what's going to happen to whom. So yes, I greatly enjoyed reading it for that reason as well. Now, this book basically just reminds me why I love vintage horror so much. In particular, late 80s sort of over-the-top, balls-to-the-wall splatter horror. And it's clear that Mr. Gates is a fan of horror. It's clear that, he was a fan of, that kind of horror fiction. I can imagine he, read Fangoria magazine and was a fan of horror films as well, because it seems like his books, both this one and his first novel, Fear, seem very influenced by horror cinema because of sort of like the cinematic, fantastical nature of these books. In particular, I think A Nightmare on Elm Street, that franchise, I think that particularly influenced him, in the way that they both sort of delve into the fantastical and have just these really outlandish sort of hallucinatory dream sequences and just the sheer creativity of it all, and I joked on a Facebook forum with some other fans of this novel that I want an Eleanor Grimm t-shirt and lunchbox. And I was only, partially joking there because Eleanor Grimm really is sort of like a Freddy Krueger type character. But she's like original Freddy Krueger, like back when he was, still menacing and scary, but albeit had a, dark sense of humor. Eleanor Grimm is very much like that. I mean, she quips these lines that are almost like one-liners. Like she says things like, you won't grow big and strong if you don't drink all your milk, like to these kids when the milk has been, poisoned. Or she says things like, I'll get you yet, my kittens, and then cackles gleefully. I mean, it's just great. I mean, you think this Eleanor Grimm, like she really is sort of like a horror icon in a way, right? So I greatly enjoyed her character, and I think that this book is the epitome. Really, it's really splatterpunk, even though Mr. Gates, was never associated with that, movement, I guess. But I mean, in the truest sense of the word, it's punk rock, because he is basically giving a finger to convention and expectations. This book is not afraid to go, beyond the pale, and flout sort of like what you think, like the rules of, horror fiction and like the idea of killing kids, killing animals, that sort of thing. Mr. Gates does not, toe the line in that regard at all. And that's refreshing, I mean, I will admit this book will not be for everyone. It won't be for most. I would imagine actually even the majority of viewers of this channel who are into, sort of paperback horror fiction, pulp fiction, I think most of you would probably be turned off by this and just find it in poor taste. Much the same way an artist like Iggy Pop was probably viewed by mainstream people in the 70s when he was doing his wild and crazy stuff that no one had seen before. But, I think it's important for books like this to exist, and I like the fact that it's like just no holds barred, really going for it. It's just in your face, just trying to be as outrageous as possible. Every scene trying to outdo the other one. All these set pieces just going crazier and crazier. I think that's great. It's a breath of fresh air, and it's the kind of fiction that I always appreciate, and I just more reason for me to appreciate Onyx, the imprint, because they seemed to really promote that sort of just outrageous, crazy, balls to the wall horror fiction in the late '80s. So yeah, Grimm Memorials gets my very, very high recommendation. I absolutely loved it. There is a sequel to this book that was published, put out by Pinnacle, I believe, in 2006, called Grim Reapings, which I am very excited to read. And I'm very excited to read, all of R. Patrick Gates' stuff, because what a mind, what a creative mind, and just a person who just really did not give a fuck, and I appreciate that. So Grimm Memorials by R. Patrick Gates. Check it out if that sounds appealing to you. Yeah, it was a blast. I loved it. So yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching the review. And Happy New Year, by the way. I will see you guys soon, and in the next couple of days, actually, either on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. I'm going to try to have up my top 10 favorite vintage horror books of 2018, ranked, of course. So that should be a lot of fun. So I will see you guys then. Until then, take it easy. Peace out.